of people are really confused. I said that, by the way, this is really important. This is the transmitter unit, the Nissan transmitter unit. People keep mentioning Godox to me. It's like, well, Godox got a high-speed sync unit for food. Godox is junk. And everybody's going to downvote this video. I hate you. I love Godox. Let me know how long that crap lasts before it breaks on you. Okay, Godox is junk. Let me repeat that again so I made myself abundantly clear. Godox is junk. Nissan. I have no company affiliation to Nissan. Don't tell me I'm being sponsored by anybody. Alright, I want to hear that kind of nonsense. Anyway, this is a HSS firmware updated Air 1 Commander transmitter for use for wireless TTL and HSS. This is not about Fujifilm. People keep asking about HSS. People don't realize what HSS is. Now, this unit is specifically coded to communicate with bidirectionally the off-camera speed light, let's say the Nissan i60A, for not only TTL, for HSS. Let's explain regular TTL flash photography in really simple terms. I don't want to get complicated and start confusing people. Hypersync. This isn't Hypersync. There's a huge difference between Hypersync and high-speed sync and regular TTL flash photography when it comes to wireless. It doesn't matter whether it's wired or wireless. The only difference between this and a regular wire or a cable, off-camera flash via the cable, is that obviously we have radio signal as opposed to wire communicating with the flash. Hypersync. This is where we're talking about broncolor stuff, okay? Hypersync is this simple. High-speed sync, by the way, is pulsed light. You can't see it because it's so fast, but the way it actually exposes your sensor to the light, since you have, say, in high-speed sync, say, well, the sync speed on this is 1/250th a second. So if I shoot regularly at 1/500th or 1/1000th or 1/2000th of a second, there's going to be a black bar at the bottom of my picture, right? Because the first curtain is dropping and the second curtain follows. Anything faster than that, then I'm going to get a black bar, correct? Because the speed light is actually exceeding the sync speed. The way high-speed sync works is that once the first curtain is moved, before the second curtain has fallen in high-speed sync, which lets me shoot at 1/500, 1/1000, 1/2000, so on and so forth. I'm not talking about leaf shutter, but just a regular camera like this, like a Fujifilm, X-T1, X-T2, a Nikon, Canon, is that it's pulsed light. This is the issue also associated with high-speed sync. People always ask me, say, well, why does high-speed sync seem to have less power? It does. I'm going to make it really simple. Everybody tries to complicate things explaining high-speed sync. I'm going to make it really simple. In a regular flash burst at regular sync speed, which on this is 1/250th of a second, we have a single flash burst. The capacitor is discharged, the xenon tube, boom. Okay, regular sync speed. In a high-speed sync, you can't see it, but what is happening is pulsed light. Since you actually have a fast-removing slit of the front curtain and the rear curtain, or the first curtain and the second curtain, what's happening with the speed light is to cover that so there's no banding issue, it is pulsing. Brrr. So the actual speed light itself, as far as the capacitors, which can only recharge so fast, is huffing and puffing. High-speed sync, put in the layman terms, really simple, is why it's not powerful enough, is because in high-speed sync, a speed light is huffing and puffing and running a marathon. As far as the capacitor is trying to charge and drain, so damn fast you can't even see it. Even faster than that. That is why high-speed sync, HSS, is not so powerful. People say, well, gee, at full blast and high-speed sync, it seems like I get like 1/4 as much distant reach. Like, I could shoot like 20 feet, but now, I'm confined to like 6 or 7 feet, something like that. That's the reason for that. Hypersync, in the case of like broncolor, as opposed to high-speed sync, where we have pulse light, is we have one enormous fat like me. Hypersync could be like me, just one super fat sumo wrestler gigantic burst of light, which covers a large duration of time. Typically, hypersync is about 1/200th of a second or 1/300th of a second. When it comes to a massive flash burst out of a studio strobe, you don't get hypersync out of little speed lights. They don't have the power, they don't have the capacitor juice to drop that kind of serious power. Typically, for example, on like 1/2 power on a speed light, the flash duration is average about 1/13,000th of a second, which is a small duration or a small aperture of time. 1/300th of a second is a huge fat ass hunk of light. Hypersync, as opposed to high speed sync, instead of pulsing light, it's actually letting out one huge, kind of like, fat grandpa sitting at the table who lets out a big long fart. It's like, God, is this ever going to... See, when you say something really goofy like that, it helps people remember. Hypersync is just a huge fat ass hunk of light. In other words, as soon as it gets the signal to pre-fire before the first curtain starts to open, it's already released the pulse. So the duration of the flash able to shoot in hypersync at 1/500th of a second, 1/1000th of a second, 1/2000, 4000, 8000 is this big to this big to this big to this big. But the hypersync flash burst out of the studio strobe is this damn big. So it doesn't matter whether the shutter speed is this big, this big, this big. It doesn't make any damn difference because the burst, and that requires special circuitry, special capacitor drop of a charge to allow that huge ass burst of light over 1/300th or 1/250th of a second, which is a huge duration because a typical flash duration out of a speed light, half power is, half power would be 1/6000th of a second, which is this as opposed to this on hypersync. So what people don't realize is that they keep asking me on this, for example. Now this is a HSS firmware updated Air 1 commander. The only thing this is going to communicate with is a likewise bidirectional communication, I60A or DI700, the 700 flash from Nissan. High-speed sync firmware is very specific timed lighting. Imagine two people that are only speaking one single unique language. It doesn't matter what I have out there, unless it's that Nissan unit, even though this is high-speed sync, it ain't going to work. There's no other speed light, even though this is high-speed sync firmware enabled. There's no other speed light out there that is going to drop high-speed sync light if I shoot at above normal sync speed, which is 1/250th of a second. So if I shoot 500, 1,000, 2,000th, or 1/8000th of a second, this is not going to help any other speed light other than the Nissan unit, and that is true of any other speed light as well. Young Nuo junk, Godox junk, and they are junk. Same is true with Nikon's creative lighting system. High-speed sync is not only pulse light, it is very, very precisely coordinated and timed lighting. To get the actual timing right on this, it took Nissan quite a while. Because, of course, Fujifilm kept updating their firmware, for example, but this applies to Nikon and anything else. HSS is not only always pulse light, but it is very precisely coordinated and timed lighting, which means you need to have very specific firmware, talking high-tech code at very specific timing, like you need to start firing now. It actually is telling, by the way, the speed light in all forms of high-speed sync to start firing before, technically, the first curtain opens. It starts firing right before it opens. It keeps pulsing like until it closes. And this is how high-speed sync works. The downside to that is that it's not as powerful because your speed light is huffing and puffing running a marathon. Because for that capacitor to charge and drain that fast to pulse that light, your speed light is going literally. That makes it really simple, doesn't it? As opposed to letting out one single burst of light at sync speed or lower. 1/60th of a second, 1/30th of a second, 1/250th of a second. Your speed light has no issue. It's boom and done. Then it's ready for another shot. But when you start shooting high-speed sync, it cannot let out in pulsed light extremely powerful pulsed light. That is why high-speed sync is less powerful. You'll hear people talk about power fall off with high-speed sync, and the reason for that is all those damn speed lights out there, every damn one of them is the same. It is only able to charge that capacitor and drain it and charge it again at a set rate, and that rate, while fast, is not crazy ass fast. So it can't give itself a huge ass charge and discharge, a huge ass charge and discharge. So high-speed sync photography is less powerful. I talk about people having power fall off in high-speed sync because there's literally pulsing a lot of light. So with the maximum charge capacity of the capacitor is typically around about 1/3 of full capacity. That's the only way it could charge and drop that light for pulse light in high-speed sync or HSS photography. Fujifilm calls it FP photography. Doesn't make any difference if Fujifilm calls it FP. FP is just Fujifilm's way of saying high-speed sync photography or HSS. I think I nailed it much more clearly and much more succinctly than anybody else. So Hypersync is a huge ass fart of light. Boom! High-speed sync is a short duration, drop off power, rip of light, but all of it, well, not Hypersync, but TTL flash photography and high-speed sync photography is high communication, high coordination, timing of the release of that speed light. You just can't say, well, I'm going to stick this HSS transmitter here and I'm going to use any old damn thing. No, it doesn't work that way. Not Fujifilm, not Nissan, not Yongnuo, not Nikon, not Canon, not nobody. Nobody works like that. I hope I made that abundantly clear. I think I made that pretty damn clear. A lot clearer than most other people do. I hope I simplified it. Because when you simplify it, people go, oh, I understand. So now you know the difference between hypersync, high-speed sync, and regular TTL flash photography, and why the hell you don't get as much power out of high-speed sync flash photography. Because high-speed sync photography causes your speed light to go it's literally doing that as far as the capacitors inside of it are concerned. By the way, if you do a lot of high-speed max power flash photography, your capacitor, if it's a little bit on the gray-haired side, it will tend to blow. And it's really interesting when capacitors blow because they make a nice bang noise that will wake you up and make you scrape your underwear. I think it's a really loud noise. Bam! There's nothing more exciting than hearing a capacitor go boom! Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and drop me a buck or two, tell me to jump off a cliff, whatever makes you happy. Bye.